Have you ever, correctly, had a gut feeling to dislike someone who, on the surface, was a cool person that everybody else liked? What's that story? While in the army we moved into a new house in upstate New York. We were being neighborly and talked to a guy across the street. He had 5 kids, no wife. He also had multiple neighborhood kids playing in the yard. He told us we can always send ours over. He gave us both this horrible feeling, so we smiled and GutFo. About a year later my wife told me, I was in Kandahar, that his kids were taken from him. He had been molesting them at least ever since his wife died. The amount of pedophile stories in this thread is freaking me out. Ex-wife's second husband. Took 10 years but I was right. He is currently on year 1 of a 32-year sentence for repeated abuse of his daughter. Yes, but I suppressed it so quickly and fast, because I felt like it was horribly ungracious since she was being so friendly. Over the next couple years, she became my closest friend in the new town I had moved to. Then the following couple years it vacillated between being close, but just feeling like she really didn't want me around or was messing with me a little bit. Turns out she was having an affair with my husband and was literally intentionally driving me crazy. Interviewing a guy for a job. Something doesn't feel right, but my interviewing partner really seemed to like him. We get to his portfolio of work and I see my side project that I worked on alone as one of his websites. So I start asking him questions about it, what challenges he had, how the client was, etc. I let him go on and on, then I say, I have to level with you. This is my work. You are showing me my own work. Look at the source near the footer. It has my website in the comments. He went ghost white and I just sat there. After that I coached him a little on how not to suck and he left. We called the contract agency that sent him and let them know. Oh my god, that's amazing. What a total tool. You were super nice to him. Man, that would burn me up so bad it'd be hard for me to even finish the interview. My childhood best friend's mother's boyfriend. He creeped me out and I hated being over her house when he was there. Her family went on a ski trip with mine, and my parents both thought he was great, funny, charming, etc. They didn't understand why I didn't like him. Years later, my best friend told me that he sexually abused her starting when she was about 9. I probably was picking up on her fear of him. I had a good friend when I was in primary school who had a stepdad I really couldn't stand. He was quite a bit older than her mom and very strict. I even avoided to go to her place when he was there. Later she told me that he beat her and her brother quite regularly. Sometimes our gut instincts are only sort of right. When I was in 7th grade, there was this girl who was really quiet and sort of creepy, and she smelled like crap. Literally, she wore these odd dresses that looked like pioneer dresses, homemade, and she was just, well, creepy. No one talked to her. People tried to avoid sitting next to her. We all gossiped about her as being the epitome of creepiness. Then one day she was gone. Didn't come to class. The next day, it was all over the news. The police had arrested these horrifically abusive parents, who were neglecting and abusing their daughter, and who had kept their younger son locked in a cage his entire life, and never fed him. The younger boy was kept alive by, you guessed it, his older sister. The police were led to the house by neighbors' complaints about the stench. So this poor, smelly girl was suffering abuse from her parents, and all the while sneaking food and water to her little brother, who was literally locked in a cage for years upon years, keeping him alive, and then coming to school, where she would be avoided and mocked behind her back and sometimes humiliated. She was a weirdo, and our guts all told us there was something wrong there, but she was a freaking hero. Never heard what happened to her after the parents were arrested. Hope she recovered. My snake did. I had the sweetest, chillest ball python who never nipped or hissed or reared up or anything. She'd just curl up with you and hang out. One day a friend brought over some of his friends and all of a sudden my snake went nuts, standing straight up in her tank and hissing at one of the guys. A couple of weeks later, that dude robbed my house while I was out of town. R.I.P. Guinevere, a good snake. What a good noodle. 3. It was a co-worker of mine. Call her M. M was friendly, and everyone liked her. Something was up with her though, and I had a bad vibe. She was always complaining about money issues. but then would go out for meals or come into work with new clothes that were not indicative of someone with severe money problems. She allegedly complained of such severe financial problems that she was telling people she was having trouble putting food on the table for her kids. It was that level of desperation. Everyone really liked her. I didn't. I had a really odd feeling about her, like she was being constantly deceptive. People would always help her out, either by giving her gift cards to Target, extra clothes or canned food. She also complained of car issues for a period of several months. This wonderfully kind lady at work, C, let M borrow her car during the workday. This was so that M could use whatever money she said she had to go to the store and buy food for her family. Additionally, she used C's car to take a nap from time to time. She claimed to work another evening job and she was often very tired. Every year, our company sponsored a local family that needed a lot of help. We were a small business at the time, 50 employees, and we'd all donate something to the family at Christmas. It was usually toys, clothes, gift cards and so forth. This year, we decided as a group to my silent opposition that M would be our family this particular year. We amassed close to $1,100 worth of food, toys and clothes and presented it to M before Christmas that year. She cried and said thank you. 3 months later, C's car was stolen right out of the employee parking lot. Coincidentally, M didn't report back to work that day after lunch. Long story short, M had made a copy of C's car key at some point and stole the car and drove out of state with the intent to flee and not return. We had come to learn that M had a long history of criminal charges, and M was eventually arrested in a traffic stop after C reported the car stolen. As it turned out, M was a financial criminal, specializing in identity theft. She had swindled many people and had a long criminal history including multiple felonies. But right from the beginning, I knew something was up with her that I didn't like, but I couldn't put a real finger on it. I don't know why I saw it and no one else did. I actually began to question my morals, asking myself why do I dislike M when everyone else does not. I wrestled with it personally for some time, but in a weird way felt vindicated when the truth revealed itself. That vindication was not weird at all. About 15 years ago I worked in a small office, mostly men, all who I really liked. A new guy started one day, and instantly I had a bad feeling about him. I don't even know exactly why I felt that way, and all the other people seemed fine with him. So I did my best to be polite and find things to talk to him about. I was in my mid-30s. He was about the same or a little older, and we both had young sons. So I was able to find some common ground. Apparently he and his wife didn't live together. She might have been back in his home country, but I could never shake that bad feeling. A year or so later, I had left the company to have my second son, and a friend who had taken my place there called me one morning and said, "Did you read the paper today? That man had been arrested in another state, apparently having been set up by an FBI sting online, where he had been chatting with who he thought was a 13-year-old girl and was meeting up with her in the trunk of his car. They found a video camera and rope." Whoa. I never trusted my ex-BF's uncle. I just knew he was trouble and had issues with him visiting or my ex visiting him. He was arrested in Florida last year for production and selling meth and hosting a prostitution ring out of his home. Later learned the ex partook in all the activities at his uncle's home. Apparently my gut was right about the uncle, but not about my ex. Blinded by love, I guess. I worked as a CNA in a nursing home during right after high school. We got a new guy that made a lot of mistakes and obviously had some cognitive impairments. I am not sure what was wrong exactly, but it was obvious that he was mentally slow. Some of his mistakes were dangerous, leaving a patient with a feeding tube laying flat, increasing their chance of aspirating food into their lungs. For example, on several occasions, I complained about him to our supervisor and also vented to my co-workers that I just did not feel right about him. Everyone accused me of not having any compassion. They said he was slow, but that he would get it, and I should be more understanding. They all thought that I was being judgmental because of his disability, but it felt like more than that to me. One night, another CNA went to answer a call light and walked in on him abusing an elderly bedridden woman. He didn't even stop, just held eye contact with the co-worker until he was finished. This all happens over 15 years ago. He went to jail obviously, but I saw him in Walmart last summer, so he is out now. I sure hope he is never able to work in a position to take advantage of vulnerable people ever again. My mom brought her new boyfriend over the house one time for me to meet him. He weirded me out. I can't tell you why, but I didn't like him. Maybe it's because he was a 35-year-old man who wore visors. Friendly and funny guy who my family liked. A year into their relationship he beat the heck out of my mom and stole her dog. Probably the closest I've come to an assassination attempt. Maybe it's because he was a 35-year-old man who wore visors. Funniest thing I've read this year. So my husband has this cousin, Jason, and he freaking loathes him. Always has since he was a small child. There are stories about my husband trying to beat Jason's ass when they were 5. It was so bad that as an adult my husband refused to attend any family gatherings that Jason would be at out of the fear that he would beat the living crap out of him. Nobody could ever figure out why my husband hated his cousin so much. He had never done anything to him. And my husband is the most laid back and friendly person I have ever met. He genuinely likes everyone, except for this method trucker. I never understood it myself, never having met Jason, and anytime I would ask my husband about it he would always says, "I freaking hate that kid. He's not right." Jason was pretty well liked throughout the family, so my husband's position caused him to catch a lot of crap from other family members. I finally got to meet Jason a few years ago at my brother-in-law's wedding, and I saw right freaking off what my husband was talking about. To the casual observer there was nothing tangible that Jason did that you could put your finger on, but something was off. He would laugh and smile, but the smile didn't go all the way to his eyes. His eyes were just flat and empty, unless he was looking at the girls at the wedding. And when I say girls I mean children under 10. When he looked at those girls his eyes lit up with a sick little light. You know how someone who hasn't eaten in a long time looks when they finally get a meal they love set in front of them? That's how Jason's eyes looked when he looked at those little girls, like he was hungry and they were his meal. About 2 years ago Jason's dad married a woman with 2 young daughters. Jason would often volunteer to babysit. About a year ago Jason was arrested and convicted of abusing both those little girls multiple times. Frick you, Jason. I wish my husband had beat your ass, you creepy frick. It must have been freaking horrible to see that in him and not be able to do anything about it. My older mother got this boyfriend. Mom was in her 60s and the boyfriend was probably mid 60s also. One day she brought him over to my house, where I was a single mom to a 3-year-old boy. I'm usually friendly, or at the least polite, but I looked at that guy and said, "No, don't come in my house." My mom was shocked. She said, "Wang dip thong. This is blah blah." My boyfriend, I told her I was sorry. I shut the door. About 6 months later he went to jail for abusing boys. I like to think she actually said Wang dip thong. My sister's first husband. I was 5 when they got married, and I only actually met him a few times in person because they lived on the other side of the country. My family really loved him. He was charming, athletic, smart, handsome, financially secure, and seemed like a great dad when they had kids. Plus, he was never anything but nice to me, but I always sensed something shady about the guy. When I was in the 5th grade, I remember getting in huge trouble for a class assignment, an essay describing our families, in which I described him as a bad person, pretty much word for word. There's something I just don't like about him. It was one of the only times I got spanked as a child. Well, fast forward a couple years, and my parents discovered that he'd been abusive to my sister and the kids almost the whole time. They ended up divorcing, and he has proven to be a complete sociopath ever since. He hadn't paid a dime in child support, despite being well off enough to buy a new luxury sports car every few years, and uses their 2 kids, who are now teenagers who know he's full of crap, to play mind games with my sister, bringing her to court for full custody, knowing he won't win due to his past, just to cause her inconvenience and rack up legal fees for her. Just as an example, he also has refused to let the kids fly out to visit our side of the family a few times for no reason whatsoever. He's an butthole, a narcissist, a complete freaking sociopath, and somehow 10-year-old me was able to sense it before anyone else in my family. My ex-wife's childhood friend married a man I hated. Just didn't feel right about him. She had 2 kids the same age as ours and we were asked multiple times about sleepovers and I always said no. Looked mean but didn't care. Then a year or so later her friend wakes up one night to find him assaulting her daughter. He freaks out, beats her and runs. When I played high school football we had an equipment manager who had been doing the job for decades and was absolutely adored by the community. Guy was in his 70s 80s. One day, I'm ready for a game early, so I head out to the bus that's taking us. I see him loading stuff up, so I offer to help him load a few things. Once we're all loaded on the bus, he walks to me in the back, cause I was a cool kid, and hands me a Hostess cupcake in front of everyone as a thank you. He handed me the cupcake, looked me in the eye, and the sense of dread just falls on me. I have no idea why, and everyone's looking at me so I act normal. I eat the cupcake, because I was, and still am a fat ass and will eat any cupcake you hand me, and just kinda write off the feeling. That summer he was arrested for sexually assaulting some 15-year-old girl. I'm pretty sure they thought he did more, but couldn't prove it or something. You have been visited by a normal duck. He doesn't do much but he'd like you to like the video. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.